And once you get this disease, there's no cure, there's only treatment. Talk a little bit about, I'm gonna go through some things here about different drugs. All of this stuff you can find on the internet. But I wanna put some personal experiences behind each of these things if I can. Alcohol is the most widely abused teen drug. And you're probably thinking, oh, just a beer, just a drink. If I drink a little bit too much, maybe I'll have a hangover. And it doesn't really affect me because I'm a teenager. Well, it does. I've got a friend that I used to work with. He has a son, young adult. He called me last week. He says, Ron, I don't know what to do, Logan. He's an alcoholic. He's been to rehab 3 times. And last week he tried to kill himself. And he lived. But what do we do with him now? He's 22 years old. An alcoholic isn't the guy that you see sitting on the sidewalk with a bottle of whiskey in a paper bag. An alcoholic isn't the dirty homeless guy. Alcoholics can be anybody. They can be teenagers, they can be young adults. There are consequences to what you're talking about. Now, let's get real. The one thing I want to make you, I'm not going to stand up and preach at you. I am a realist. I live in the world of what is. I do not live in the world of what ought to be. If I lived in the world of what ought to be, I ought to not have to come here and talk to you. What ought to be is you shouldn't have drugs to even tempt you. All of these bad things ought to disappear. But the world of what is says things happen. So let's deal with it. And I think we got to deal with it honestly. So it happens. Marijuana? Okay, let's just, what's it going to hurt to smoke a little weed? I mean, it's just weed. No big deal. Well, I'm going to tell you what, not everybody that smokes weed is going to be a heroin addict. That's the truth. But I've met a lot of heroin addicts, and NA meetings, and rehab, and counseling, and everything else. And I have not met a single heroin addict that didn't start out smoking weed. So does it mean if you smoke weed you're going to be a heroin addict? I don't subscribe to that. But I've never met a heroin addict that didn't smoke weed first. And no one knows who that person is. If you'd asked my son, in fact I have asked him, how did you go from smoking weed to sticking a needle in your arm? Anybody want to guess what his answer was?
You got boring?
Hmm?
You got boring, like you wanted better high?
No, it was much more simpler answer than that.
He didn't know why?
He didn't know. I don't know how I did that. I don't know. And how people do that is if you're one of those people that are you really like it, and you're chasing the next high, you don't know what happens in your life with that. He didn't know. Cocaine, crack, these aren't inner city drugs. My son chews coke. I have found it in my house before. When I had a party and then left, it was literally the coke right on our dining room table. I can walk out onto the sidewalk of this high school, the main entrance out here. And I can stand on that sidewalk and see two places where my son used to buy drugs. Standing on that sidewalk, two houses. We're not isolated because we're out here in Baser and in Linwood. We're not in the middle center city. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Meth. Now, meth, think about this. Have you seen on the news where these meth houses, where they bust a meth house, and they have to go clean them up? They bring in the hazmat crews, and the guys are wearing the Tyvek coveralls, and they've got respirators on and everything else, right? And have you ever seen inside those houses? What they look like inside? It's just about as bad, it's as bad as you can imagine. It really is. In fact, if I went in one of those meth houses and I made you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you saw what came, you know, I brought it out to you, say, here, you want a sandwich? You'd go, are you crazy? I'm not gonna eat something that come out of a place like that. But yet, if you're a meth addict, not only would you take the stuff that came out of that house, you'll smoke it, you'll shoot it up, or whatever, and you'll be happy to do it, and you'll live in that squalor, because that's what your addiction will drive you to do. Heroin. Told you my son was a heroin addict. Tell you a little bit more about this. He was using black tar heroin. That's a nasty stuff. It mainly comes out of Mexico, smuggled across the border. But heroin. One of these classes that one time when I was talking about this, after he got clean, he come with me to one of these talks. And literally, he was asked the question, why did you do this? Why did you start doing this? And he had a very simple answer. He sat on that gray stool right back there in the back of the room, and he said, I wanted to be cool. That was his only answer. I wanted to be cool. This was a kid in high school. He was already cool. Everybody knew him. All the girls liked him, so I guess he must have been cute. But he had no problem in school. I mean, as a sophomore, what grade we got here? What grade level you guys?
Sophomore.
Freshmen, sophomores? As a sophomore, he took pre-calc and trig and just sailed through it. Okay? I mean, we're not talking about a dumb kid here. We're talking about a kid that knew better. But he said he wanted to be cool. Now, I want to ask you what seems cool. You know what you do when you shoot up heroin? You're sitting someplace on the floor maybe with a candle, and you're melting this stuff in a spoon. And then what you do, you take your needle and you suck it back up, you suck the stuff out of the spoon in the needle, and you got your dad's belt wrapped around your arm. And you put that belt in your teeth and you pull it real tight. And you stick the needle into your vein. You pull the plunger back a little bit until there's red goes into the syringe. And it reds your blood as a swirl. And then you push the plunger in. And you see everything disappear out of that needle into your body. Now I struggle with that because I think, how is that cool? And if you have to, when you need your fix, you'll do it in your car, you'll do it in the bathroom at McDonald's. You'll sit down with your back up against a stool at Quick Trip. You'll do it in the park, you'll do it wherever you have to do it. Because honestly, your kit never gets too far from you. But the thing is when you get to that point, it's not about